It being the 1st of April as well, we say goodbye to March. There's a lot to look ahead to as far as the country's president is concerned. Cyril Ramaphosa is going to take the witness stand when the Human Rights Commission's hearing resumes into the July unrest, that July unrest we saw last year. He's going to be testifying as the responsible head of state. Several witnesses, including politicians, journalists and ordinary citizens, have appeared before the commission, offering first-hand accounts of those harrowing 8 days in July of last year. Thulasizwe Simelane tracking developments for us. Thulasizwe, and it's important, of course, that we hear from eyewitnesses that were on the ground recounting those 8 days of violence and anarchy in the country. But in the end, the first citizen of the country has to take responsibility, and that's what we're all waiting to hear about today.
Yeah, absolutely, Gareth. It's all about accountability, is it not? More than 300 South Africans died in those days of chaos, violence and looting. And for a number of days, people were asking questions, where is the state? Where is the state machinery to put an end to all of this? We saw police in various parts of the country that were engulfed in this kind of violence, battling really to control the crowds as people kept going back over and over again, looting as if, law and order had broken down. In fact, it's been argued that to some extent law and order had broken down. A lot has since happened. There's been, of course, a number of moves, including that cabinet reshuffle that President Cyril Ramaphosa executed. And I do this, Gareth, because critics really pointed out that no one really was made to account and pay the ultimate price in as far as accountability is concerned. It was just a shuffling of positions and nothing really major happening by way of people paying the ultimate price and being removed from the executive. But this testimony by President Cyril Ramaphosa firstly come off the back of some of his cabinet ministers testifying before the Human Rights Commission hearings into the July unrest, and that the contradictions between them these hearings only served to sharpen and really highlight the contradictions in terms of the different understandings of who knew what when and who was supposed to act on what information there was there. But importantly, it comes just about, no more than 12 hours or so since Cyril Ramaphosa confirmed Fanny Masemola as the new Commissioner of Police in South Africa, one of the moves that he had said he would execute to strengthen law and order machinery in South Africa. So let's go back a little bit before I bring in Manqoba Mchunu, because in the midst of all the confusion, there was first the confusion about how to characterize what was happening in July last year. So for his part, President Cyril Ramaphosa initially expressing concerns about what he was saying was mobilizing along ethnic lines. That didn't go down too well in parts of KwaZulu-Natal. He was criticized, in fact, not only in KwaZulu-Natal, by many critics. But importantly, take a listen to how he characterized what was happening in those days as he spoke to the nation on the 16th of July.
This attempted insurrection has failed. It has failed to gain popular support amongst our people. It has failed because of the efforts of our security forces, and it has failed because South Africans have rejected it and have stood up in defense of our hard-won democracy.
So President Cyril Ramaphosa describing what we were seeing in those days as a failed insurrection. In a moment we will get to how he was quickly contradicted by the then Minister of Defense, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, who is now the Speaker of the National Assembly in the wake of that reshuffle. But I want to bring in Manqoba Mchunu before we hear from Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. So it was days of chaos, Manqoba. You were on the ground along the team at eNCA, just tracking what was happening in those days. Just take me back to how much further along we've gone in understanding what government knew at that point, who knew what at what point from these hearings that we've been hearing from the South African Human Rights Commission.
Well, Thulas, one thing that we certainly do know is that this was a well-orchestrated plan, seemingly by those who, at the time, were behind President Jacob Zuma. And that is from the testimony from some of the witnesses that have come forward. We've heard from Business Unity South Africa saying that, from what it appears like, from as back as December, there were those attacks on the trucks on the N3 in KwaZulu-Natal. And those were all signs that there was this unrest that was unfolding in the country. Also heard from various ministers, including the police minister, Bheki Cele, also admitting to the fact that this was a well-coordinated plan. In fact, that he referred to it saying that you could see that there were dark clouds that were forming in KwaZulu-Natal during those days when the unrest was about to take place. But in terms of what government knew, we now understand from Bheki Cele, he of course claims that government had never received, or the police in fact had never received any form of intelligence in the lead up to this unrest that happened. And when it happened, he says that he only relied on WhatsApp messages to get any sort of intelligence on what was happening on the ground. So there was that breach in terms of the two offices, the Office of the State Security Agency as well as Bheki Cele, according to him, where he says that he didn't get any form of intelligence at all during that stage. But when you listen to the minister, or the former minister of State Security, Minister Ayanda Dlodlo, she says, of course, that this is not true, because they, as a state security agency, had warned government as early as December of that previous year. She says that there were quite a number of alerts that were given to police. She says just between the period of May and July alone, there were about 21 orange and red alerts that were issued to government, informing them that there was this unrest that was unfolding in the country. But it seems that nothing was done about it. In fact, it seems that the police were caught napping at a time when they really needed to act, and that's been one of the criticism that has been leveled against the police at this particular commission.
All right, Mangoba, let's pause there for a moment. And Gareth, as we pause, we want to, as Mangoba is talking about the contradictions between the ministers, there were certainly contradictions between ministers and the president. Earlier on, you heard from President Cyril Ramaphosa's characterization that what we were seeing in those days was a failed insurrection. Well, it didn't take too long. Just 2 days, I think on the 18th of July, we heard from the then Minister of Defense, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. In fact, you will not hear it in the sound clip that we're going to play because it comes just a few seconds before. But the few seconds before what we're about to play, she says that it was neither a coup nor a failed insurrection. Here's how she would characterize it.
We've also had people making reference to insurrection, coup. And the issue is, if it's an insurrection, then the insurrection must have a face. If it's an insurrection against government. If it is about a coup, the coup will also have a face. But none of those so far talk to that. Our view is that we probably are seeing signs of a counter-revolution.
So as Mangoba was explaining, even in the testimonies before the Human Rights Commission, Gareth, the contradictions have continued. And he rightly points out, does Mangoba Mkhunu, that the former State Security Minister, Ayanda Dlodlo, is adamant that intelligence products were produced, were shared in the NAT joints. This is the structure of government that coordinates the work of government around the security cluster at the officials level. But importantly, expect, Gareth, that President Cyril Ramaphosa will have to answer questions about filtering through what was being heard from operational level to the officials level through the directors general, commissioners, etc., to the executive, because Minister Ayanda Dlodlo importantly says she took the responsibility of ensuring that the president, the commander-in-chief, is appraised of some of these intelligence resources that were being shared. But importantly, President Ramaphosa also chairs the National Security Council, which, as we know now from the work of the expert panel that was looking into the unrest, had not met in a number of months before the unrest unfolded. As we see some of the arrivals, in fact, the team can show you, I think you can turn around and quickly just show the arrivals. This is a motorcade from the presidency, very early on, arriving at this hotel in Sandton, where these hearings are being held. So it does point, Gareth, that we will have an early start, and it's going to be a long day for President Cyril Ramaphosa, his second appearance at a commission of sorts. You'll remember, of course, the Zondo Commission of Inquiry, and this is a Chapter 9 institution, the Human Rights Commission, basically delving into an issue that is of public concern, that implicated human rights. As you know, as we've been pointing out, that there were a number of people that died, over 300 South Africans that died. So today, expectations of accountability from the number one citizen.
And it's those answers, Thulas, as I say goodbye to you as well, that many people, especially in the KZN province, still do not understand how we got to this point. Why was there such a failure in communication? Perhaps the commander-in-chief was appraised, as you say, of what was happening, but that wasn't filtering down to the ground level. And that's where a lot of the confusion was coming in. Because I love the way you framed it. Who knew what and when? And that seems to have been the failure. We'll come back to you again, Thulasizwe Simelane and Manqoba Mqunu, expecting the commander-in-chief, the first citizen of the country, to appear before the Human Rights Commission a little bit later today to answer to those 8 days of unrest that we experienced here in South Africa in July of last year.